Hello YouTube, it's Zoe here, and today I have a tutorial for you. I've decided to call these tutorials Fstop, Drop and Roll. Get it? Today's Fstop, Drop and Roll is about aperture. No, not this aperture. This aperture. Basically, aperture is one of the three things you need to think about when you're setting up your shot, but we'll get to those other ones later. Aperture, or f-stop as you might have heard it called, is the opening in the lens that lets the light into the camera. The easiest way to think about aperture is like your pupil. It'll open up wide to let more light in when it's dark, or it will close down to let less light in when it's bright. So, if you were taking a photo in the bright sun, you would only need quite a small aperture. But if you're taking a photo at night or in the dark, you would need a pretty big aperture. Now the term f-stop or f-number or any other variation you've heard simply refers to aperture. The f, which obviously doesn't stand for aperture, stands for fraction. And this fraction is just referring to the fraction of the opening of the lens. Now this next bit is where they're just trying to confuse you. The larger the opening, the smaller the number. So this means that f2 is actually pretty wide, and f22 is pretty tiny. So this means that f2 is brilliant for dark circumstances, and f22 is perfect for bright, glary light. As well as affecting the amount of light that enters your camera, aperture also controls what's called your depth of field. Depth of field simply refers to how much you can get in focus at once. So if you want that type of portrait that has the person in focus and everything behind them completely blurred out, then you want to use a big aperture like f2. And if you want to take a landscape photo where you want as much as possible to be in focus, then you want to use a really small aperture like f22 or 32. Now your apertures work on a sliding scale from f1.2 all the way to f32, depending on what lens you have. So for instance, I'm in focus, but my background here is pretty blurry. Now if I change something, so I just changed my aperture from f5.6 to f22, so it's a lot smaller, but you're getting a lot more in focus behind me here, so you can see all the photos on my wall and everything. Now, if I want to make that as blurry as possible, now I'm on f2.8, so you can see that everything behind me is blurrier than it was at the start. Just so you can see that, I'll change it back to 5.6 like we were at the start of the video. See? Little less blurry. So, you can use this to really draw attention to something in a photograph, or to get as much in focus as you want. Now, if you want to try out learning aperture on your SLR, but you don't have to worry about any of the other settings yet, your camera should have an aperture priority setting. This will be marked on your dial with either an A or an AV. Those settings make it pretty easy to have a play around, so give it a try. So good luck, and let me know how it goes in the comments down below. This has been Fstop, Drop and Roll, and I'll see you next week for another tutorial. Bye!